when I was growing up, my first love in terms of art was painting. And something that I loved about painting or like looking at something in a museum is that there's a border there. Do you know what I mean? There's like
Hmm.
literally like
Hmm.
there's a canvas hanging in front of you that's limited, right?
Yeah.
And yet within that kind of border, these artists were able to portray an insane amount of things. And I think I was inspired by that. I'm always thinking of my projects in terms of like kind of there's a frame, there's like a border. And so I'm trying to fill it as much as possible rather than think I'm going to make the canvas bigger and bigger and bigger.
Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today we are joined by award-winning author Paul Yoon to talk about his latest book, Etna. This book is told from the perspective of an ex-military dog, Etna, who after spending years fighting in a devastating war, decides to embark on the long journey back to the home he was taken from when he was a young pup. In this episode, Paul and I talk about where he got the idea to write from the perspective of a dog, his interest in conflict, journeys, and home, and how his love of reading led him to becoming a writer. Our book club pick for August is Fish Tales by Nettie Jones. We will be discussing the book with Sequoia Holmes on Wednesday, August 26th. Do you like podcasts and want even more bookish content? Well, hello, you are in luck. You can join our community, the Stacks Pack, on Patreon, and you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, on Substack. Each of these places offers different perks. Over on Patreon, you can be part of our community conversations on Discord, our virtual book club, join our year-long reading challenge. On Substack, you'll find my hot takes on everything from literary gossip to the latest pop culture and sports news. In both places, you get a monthly bonus podcast episode, and by supporting the work on Patreon and Substack, you make it possible for me to make this podcast every single week and to make it free for all. So please consider joining the Stacks Pack at patreon.com/thestacks and subscribing to my newsletter, Unstacked, at tracythomas.substack.com. Okay, and now it's time for my conversation with Paul Yoon. Hi, everybody. I am so excited today because I get to talk to an author of a book that has sort of become an inside joke for the Stacks community in a lot of ways. And Paul, I'll tell you why in a second. But the book is called Etna. The author is Paul Yoon. And if you listen to me talk with Greta and MJ earlier this year on Greta's podcast, she mentioned this book about a dog, narrated from the perspective of a dog, but it's about war. And that's how she sold me on it. She said, Tracy, I don't know. It's about a dog, but it's also about war. And this book has become this great joke of, do I love war more than I am ambivalent about animals? And so, Paul, they got me to read it. They got me to read the dog book. I liked it so much, I had to have you come on. So welcome to the Stacks.
I'm so happy to be here. That's like the greatest hook. I love it. I love that that's sort of how it got you. That's great.
Yes, it was. I don't know if you know Greta Johnson. She used to host the Nerdette podcast. Now she hosts her own show. And we did a preview of like summer books. And she kind of comes on the episode and she's like, Tracy, you probably are going to hate this. And she starts explaining the book, because I'm really not a dog person and we can talk about that later.
Yeah,
She starts
yeah.
explaining the book and then she's like, but it's kind of bleak and there's war. And I'm like, wait, Greta, if this was about a person, I probably would love it. And so it's become this thing of everyone's like, are you going to read the dog book? And I read the dog book. So that's not a great way to actually introduce the book. Why don't you be a professional author and tell people in about 30 seconds or so what Etna is actually about?
Sure. Edna is about an ex-military dog who, after a devastating war in a fictional country, decides that all he wants to do is go back home, or at least try to find his way back home. And it's essentially an Odyssey of sorts, where it's his attempt to navigate this decimated countryside to get back to where he was born. And along the way, meets a lot of humans and animals alike who are trying to rebuild after this catastrophic event.
I think, like you mentioned, it's Odyssey like. And right now, I feel like that is very SEO friendly. I'm wondering how much you were thinking about the Odyssey, if at all, before you kind of release this book into a summer that is essentially
We're
Odyssey only.
we're having our hot Odyssey summer. Yeah,
Yes.
obviously Christopher Nolan and I had many discussions about, we thought it would be best if he just sort of paved the way, and that
Yeah.
Edna would come in to close the summer out. No, I mean, well, first of all, we had no idea the movie was coming out, and so that was, a bit surreal and also lovely that people are using that word. I completely, the Odyssey was certainly on my mind. A lot of books were on my mind, but I think on a kind of base level, the Odyssey for sure. In that, I think it was one of the first books that I read when I was younger, that had a really profound impact on me. And in a lot of ways, journeys and conflicts and trying to find home have been sort of recurring themes in my work throughout my entire writing career. And so a lot of that has to do with being inspired by that story.
There's a lot of books about each of those three things,
Yeah.
right? Like journey, conflict,
Yeah.
and returning home. But what do you think it is about the coming together of those three things that interests you in your work?
I think that's a really great question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. I,
Yes, in your face, other people.
yeah, totally. No, that's a really beautiful question. I think that as sort of an artist, as a writer, I've never been interested in just like one thing, or at least I don't think I've been interested in one thing. And part of it is that there are, say, three things I've been interested, which is, creating home, finding home, starting over again, conflicts, and journeys. A lot of that has to do with, I think, this is probably really boring, but, you know, when I was growing up, my family was really itinerant. We were moving around a lot, right? And
Mm,
so I think I grew up in a kind of state of endless journeying, if that makes any
mhm,
sense.
mhm,
My family also has history with conflicts because them being Korean immigrants, my father's family experienced the Korean War firsthand, and so that's sort of on my mind. But as we were constantly itinerant, I think I was thinking about what is home, like what makes a home if we're moving around a lot. Um,
mm.
where do I feel rooted? And ultimately, is that a place thing or is that something else that I'm looking for?
Yeah. Do you feel like you have an answer? Where's home? What is home?
Home is the family that I found, which who's my wife and my dog, my 12-year-old pup, is going on 3, 12 going on 3. But I think it's also, like home is them, but also we found a place that we love. We're in the Hudson Valley, New York,
Nice.
and we have a great community here, and we sort of see a future here, and we have also been itinerant, and so it's really nice. We've been here for about 3 years now, and it's just really nice to feel rooted. Or it, I think it allows you to kind of like be hopeful about the future and see a future, right? Where because
Mm.
you're building towards something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it's so interesting. I'm just thinking about the book, your book, and the Odyssey, and what you're saying, and
Yeah,
how when you're kind of in the journey or amidst the conflict or headed home, all of these three things kind of together, the future feels very specific. Like Etna is going to the coast. That
yeah,
is the only future. Whereas once you get to a place that feels like safe enough where you can sort of relax, you can envision this future, like what you're saying, that's much less specific and more sort of maybe hopeful or open or just like imaginative. And I think that's really
yeah,
interesting because I think a lot of people, I mean, if you'd asked me 30 minutes ago, I would have said, when you're in the middle of doing something like returning home, the future feels very concrete. And like when
yeah.
you have nothing that you're working towards, it feels very abstract. So I don't know. I love this.
Yeah, no, I think that's really beautifully put. But even Etna, I think part of working on this book was I had this, like you were saying, Tracy, like a very tangible goal for this character, this dog, which is I need to get home. I just want to go home. It's repeated like a mantra in the book, like, where's the coast? I need to get to the coast. And along the way, you have this character who's been essentially poured out because of everything that's happened. And as he slowly gets healthier, stronger on his journey as he meets fellow beings, animals, humans, as he slowly begins to build himself back up again. I think the idea of home slightly evolves too, where
Mm-hmm.
it's no longer just about the place. Because I think deep down he knows, as you know, like the a war has happened, like there may not be like an actual like physical like place that exists anymore because of
Right.
that, right? And so this kind of idea of like what is home, and kind of I think as his journey progresses, that evolves slightly and changes.
We have to talk about the dog of it all,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, sure.
I am so curious. How did the dog's point of view, being your main point of view in the book, come about? Did you know you wanted to tell a story from a dog's point of view, or did you kind of come to this war story and think, I can't just do it like with people? Like, how could I kind of like, how does this come to you?
I wasn't thinking of a war story at all. I was actually literally, so to backtrack, it probably just sounds so cheesy, but when I'm writing on the couch, and my dog for the past 12 years, because I've had him for 12 years. He just likes to like be on me, like when I'm
Okay.
writing, like a lot of him on me. And so I've had to like learn how to figure out like how to write with a laptop with a dog on me,
Okay.
and I'm sure it's like altered like my skeletal like
Sure.
structure,
You need to get
forever.
like
I'm just
different
like, I
massages or
know, I'm
something,
just like in
acupuncture.
pain all the time. But as he gets older, I've been thinking about like what is life going to be like after he's gone,
Mm,
and part of that was sort of imagining like his voice and kind of imagine conversations that we're having. And so the project started because I was kind of just sort of playing around with voice and
mm,
just being like, oh, I think this is what Oscar, my dog, would sound like. And just kind of played around with some sentences. So, the opening, I was born near water, I was born on a farm, etc. I was just sort of imagining if he was like, Dad, I'm going to tell you my life story, like, and it became kind of like me just kind of creating something voice driven, and also in a way because we don't actually know where he came from, kind of imagining like where he came from. And then I think just being the writer that I am with the preoccupations I have and the things that I've been kind of like wrestling with for like 2 decades now, it just kind of blended together. Part of it was that, part of it was I just remember like early on during the war in Ukraine, there was this article. I can't remember what it was. I'm sorry, I don't know who the author. I just don't
it's
remember who
okay.
the author is. But it was in the Times, and this group of people had decided to like go back into the war zones, like, and had in these places that had just been decimated. But these civilians had to leave all their animals behind, and so
Mm,
this group decided to like try to rescue as many of the surviving animals as possible and bring them into safe zones, or across into safe zones. And I just remember reading that, and I think just something inside me broke. Like I was just a puddle,
mm.
and I think I 100% believe that part of that kind of reaction, that really strong emotional reaction, propelled a kind of story, like an imagined story too.
So interesting.
Yeah,
I'm going to look for that article, and if we can find it, we'll link to it
yeah,
in the
yeah.
show notes.
Okay, cool, cool, cool.
Um, I personally am a big reader of war things.
Hmm.
I like love war in like a
Yeah,
very, it's very weird, but I like, anyways. And I have never once considered the animals. So this was
yeah,
sort of like
yeah,
a like, oh yeah, there's animals in war.
yeah,
But the other
yeah.
thing that it made me think so much about is like innocence and participation in war, because I think most people would probably agree that a dog is an innocent party to a war. However, this dog, you know, behaves in the face of war in sort of brutal and violent ways. And so I'm wondering what you were grappling with, balancing sort of the innocence of a dog and also the realities of war.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's exactly that. I think what was sort of interesting to me was you have these innocent beings who are sort of taken and turned into soldiers. And to me, like my gut is like, that's horrible. It's just absolutely horrible. It should never happen. And yet, like, as there's also a part of me that also finds like these dogs who will bond with their people in these extreme times and work together and die for each other, protect each other. That's also something that feels very powerful to me and
Hmm.
potent. And I think part of the book was I am gonna do my darndest to not judge anything, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense.
Hmm.
Like war happens in life, so war is happening in this book. Dogs are soldiers in life, and therefore there's gonna be dogs who are soldiers in the book. The tricky thing I think for me was just like I'm just gonna kind of lay it out as objectively as possible with a kind of distance.
Hmm.
And maybe through that, like the reader can kind of build their own sort of emotional experience through that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's sort of a question of with the dog as your narrator, how
Yeah.
much when you were writing were you having to stop and be like, that's a human way of seeing things? Or like how were you sort of checking your own Paul brain and thinking like,
Yeah.
what would Oscar do? Or Etna,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's several ways to answer that. I think one way is that I was very much aware, like at every turn and at every sentence, that I wanted the reader to experience like dog. And so, therefore, there are a lot of doggy things. Like for the dog people who read this, there are like a lot of doggy moments in this
Okay.
book. And they'll know. And yet, I think for me, the tricky thing or the balance was I also wanted times where it was not dog, in that I needed to create a bridge for the human reader to kind of experience this narrative and this story and the world that they've entered. And a lot of times know about the world that they've entered in ways that a dog may not know,
Right.
right? And so I think that was the hardest, that was the challenge for me was how do you balance that dog and not dog, right? And to create this narrative where there are times where it sort of feels like it's more than dog, you know. I don't my hope is it doesn't feel like human, but it just feels like more than dog, you know.
Yeah.
There are times when I think and it like I just remember like there are times where I think I got carried away with the dogginess of it too much,
Mm.
you know,
Hmm.
where like there's a scene of levity where, you know, Etna kind of in the middle of the book like plays tug of war with another dog, you know. And that was important for me to include briefly to kind of remind the readers that even though no matter what he's gone through, there's still a little bit of like play in him.
Yeah.
But I also like I remember drafting it. It went on for like, you know, pages and pages, and I was like, I don't need to like have pages and pages of
Of
playing
like
tug
tug
of
of war.
war.
Well, I mean, the book's also super short. So that would be like really, there's like not pages and pages of anything in the book.
Exactly.
We've arrived. It's like, that's like your Cersei
Exactly.
moment. It's like a year of
Yeah.
tug of war in the middle of the Odyssey.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, but did you, how did you do it so short? I mean, I think that's really impressive. This book like does a lot and it's really
Yeah.
tiny.
I've always been interested in like how to be a maximalist in the most minimalist way possible.
Okay, say
Um,
more.
you know, I'm half of my books are short stories,
Right.
right? And
Right.
and so half of my time is spent writing short stories, but I still in my mind I want my short stories to pack as much of a novelistic punch
Right.
as my longer work, right?
Wait,
I
can I
think
ask?
like yeah,
Can
yeah,
I
yeah.
ask a
Go ahead.
clarifying question? When you say you want to be as maximalist, like in your minimalist writing,
Yeah.
if the minimal constraint is the amount of words or pages, what are you trying to be maximalist with?
Uh emotion, distance traveled, temporal, you know, distance, everything. Just like to sort of feel like the reader has gone through a life. And but within like under like, you know, 20 pages or something like that, right?
Right. And are you really thinking about those things like on a craft level? Are you like, okay, I really want to like tamp down the length and like punch up the emotion? Or is it something that's just sort of how you write?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think just my natural tendency is to sort of write a bit more like short than other writers, but no, I'm very much aware of it.
Mhm.
I'm very much conscious of it. I think I don't know if this is the best answer, but when I was growing up, my first love in terms of art was painting, like was the
Okay.
visual arts.
Okay.
Not that I wasn't a painter. I just mean like
You liked it.
on a kind of like a fan, right?
Yeah.
And something that I loved about painting or like looking at something in a museum is that there's a border there. Like it's just
Mm.
like, do you know what I mean? There's like
Hmm.
literally like
Hmm.
there's a canvas hanging in front of you that's limited, right?
Yeah.
And yet within that kind of border, these artists were able to at times portray an insane amount of things, and convey a lot of emotion, and a lot of history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think I was like early on in my life, I think I was just kind of inspired by that and formed by that. And so I'm always thinking of my projects in terms of like kind of there's a frame, there's like a border, there's like a
Hmm.
canvas, right? And so I'm trying to fill it as much as possible rather than think I'm gonna make the canvas bigger and bigger and bigger. Like
Right.
there's just like a fixed canvas, and my job is to like fill it in as much as possible. You know?
Okay, so then this brings me to one of my favorite things to talk about, which is audience. How much are you
Yeah.
thinking about audience as you're filling your frame, if you will?
I don't think I think I'm thinking less about audience. I'm thinking more about like the books that I love and the books that inspired me. And partly I think it's because like I started writing because I fell in love with books. And so writing became sort of a response. I mean, like love, like if when you're in love, you want to respond to love, right? And
Yeah.
so I fell in love with books, fell in love with some contemporary fiction, and I wanted to respond to it. And so I started writing. And to this day, like that hasn't changed, you know? And I really mean this. Like I'm every time I finish a book, I'm sort of like, do I have another book in me? I have no idea,
Mm.
you know? And I'm actually don't tell anyone, but because no one's listening. But like I'm totally okay with that. Like if I don't have
Yeah.
another book in me, I'm totally okay with that. I think for me, what I couldn't live without is if I wasn't able to read, right?
Mm.
Like reader first and foremost, like fan of other people's books first and foremost, because I'm always sort of looking for that inspiration, that fire, and it's continuously being lit, and that's how I write. And so when I'm working on a project, I'm thinking of books I love. You know,
Okay, I want to ask you about the books you love, but I also want to just
sure,
slightly push back on you is like
sure,
maybe you don't think you're thinking about audience, but everything I've heard you say so far very clearly is you thinking about audience to me. Like when you
hmm.
say that you want to pack this big emotional punch, well,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
it's an emotional punch to your audience,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
I
like
think
when
that's a
you
good point.
talk about like even like you said like the dog parents, like dog people, they'll get it. Like you
Yeah,
are sort of maybe it's something that's like more inherent in the way that you write, but like
yeah,
the reason I asked is cuz I was like this is a person who's like interested in audience. So I think it's
yeah,
interesting because you definitely are and I felt I mean as a reader I could feel you in some ways I think in the book like trying to do things to and with the reader. Like I was like, "Oh, this is like such an interesting feeling." So, I'm not it's not
yeah.
real pushback. It's just offering perhaps you are thinking about audience.
Perhaps I am. No,
Yeah.
and maybe it's like I'm just sort of not really conscious or aware of it when I'm drafting. You
Yeah, and
know?
I think also like for authors, there's a weird thing about audience that I think like in the like what I've learned from doing the show in the literary space is it's almost sometimes people are like, well, I don't think about audience because like I want and it's almost like there's like a negative thing sometimes with authors. So maybe that's also why sometimes when I ask about audience, people are like, well, I don't think about that because it's like
Yeah,
it makes it sound like maybe you're writing towards something like,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
but what I wanted to follow up about is what are some of those earliest books that you remember that you just like loved and made you feel like I have to write?
Oh God, so many. I remember reading like Michael Ondaatje for the first time. You know, his earlier books like In the Skin of a Lion, The English Patient, and just sort of being so blown away by um how he like builds stories. I don't know if
Mm,
you've read
I
Michael Ondaatje
haven't.
Tracy, but it's sort of he was like that one of the first authors where like everything felt like non-linear. I don't know if that
Hmm.
makes any sense. Like when you open a book, you know, that kind of traditional like, oh, we're starting here and then we're going to
Yeah.
end here. Like rather than that kind of experience, it was this almost like you were experiencing a kind of like collage where
Hmm.
everything just kind of like collapses into one
Mm.
thing. And so I think he's been like a tremendous kind of like just person that I absolutely love, or his work I absolutely love. So Michael Ondaatje, John Berger, who was an art critic but also a fiction writer. His novel King inspired this one,
I was going to
because
ask you
that's
about that.
also,
That was in the
yeah, that's also,
acknowledgments.
yeah. So that's also, I remember when it was written. I'm blanking on maybe the 80s or the 90s, but you know, that was sort of that was a book that was written in the perspective of a dog that is navigating this unhomed community in like a fictional I think it's a French city for 24 hours,
Mm.
and it just kind of blew my mind away, so I'll always remember that too. Yeah.
You can tell me to get lost, but how much was the film Homeward Bound in your mind as you were writing this book?
Okay, no one's gonna believe me, but
You've never seen it?
I've never seen Homeward Bound. Yeah.
Oh my God, Paul. As soon as we hang up, that's like that's like the greatest piece of dog artwork I've ever experienced in my lifetime.
I
I
know.
love Homeward Bound.
I feel like there are gonna be a lot of reactions to that.
Yeah, I mean that's scandalous to be honest. Like you needed to do your research, okay? You need to respect
I
your
know,
elders and the
I
work that
know.
came before you.
I think for me, like I've been thinking about kind of like the books and the films that sort of like have were like close to me when I was writing this. And like I think books, obviously Jack London, you know, Call of the
Okay.
Wild,
Sure, sure.
even like Ferdinand the Bull, the
Sure.
children's story, right?
Oh,
But
love.
I like one of my favorite, right? In terms of movies, I mean, this is gonna sound so silly, but like I can't stop thinking about Beethoven because he's like one
Sure.
of the best, you know.
Great dog.
And so he's, you know, he's up there. He's up there for me. Beethoven is up there for me. But no, I've never seen Homeward Bound.
You have to see it.
I
You
will, I
can't do
promise.
like a full book tour about this book and every city someone asks you about Homeward Bound and you're like, I've
I
never seen
know,
it. They're gonna be like, Paul, why not? Like, aren't
I
you gonna
know,
fly somewhere? Like it is
I
so
know.
good. There's also a great cat in it. I don't know if people have told you, but there's a great cat in it. Because it's
That's
two
great.
dogs and a cat. It's great. It's great.
Okay,
It's so
great. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so
No,
good.
I've seen everything. I've seen Charlotte's Web. Like I've
Oh
seen it
yeah.
all, but I haven't seen Homeward Bound.
Yeah, you gotta do
So,
it.
and now, okay, now you outed me, and so now I
Yeah.
have to watch it
And now
before.
I'm going to tell all my listeners like we need to continue to check in on Paul and make sure he's okay until until he sees the movie. Uh, I can't believe this. I'm so thrown. Actually, let's take a break since I'm already like off of it because of this controversial answer, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about the book. Summer has been good to us over here at the Stacks. We have released the nonfiction reading guide. We have celebrated my birthday. And as always, we have released a whole bunch of bookish episodes with authors and readers. If you've loved hanging out with us and you find yourself craving even more from the Stacks universe, consider supporting us on Patreon and Substack. Making this podcast takes a whole village. And by subscribing to both of these places, Patreon and Substack, you allow me to make the show, to work with my fantastic team, and continue doing what we do best, which is talking books. And when you join, you yourself get some perks. On Patreon, which is really our bookish community, you have access to hundreds of other readers in our Discord. You get to be part of our year-long reading challenge to push your reading goals. And you get to attend our monthly virtual book club meetups. Then over on Substack, which you can think of more as a place for hot takes and pop culture analysis, you get my newsletter, Unstacked. Over there, I'm giving you reading rankings. I'm talking about the books that are coming out and my weekly grown-up show and tell, which has me recapping my loves and my hates from the previous week. So that's what you get in each place, but there is some overlap. On Patreon and Substack, you will have access to my nonfiction reading guide from now until September 22nd, as well as access to our monthly bonus episodes. I understand that paying for subscriptions might not be available to some of you. And that's why in both Patreon and Substack, there are also free tiers that can help you stay connected with the stacks and get you some pretty cool bonus content. So head to patreon.com/the stacks to join the stacks pack and subscribe to my newsletter at tracythomas.substack.com. Okay, we are back. I want to ask you something that I was thinking a lot about when I was reading the book, which is I think sometimes when like really bad things happen to people um over there, somewhere else, not wherever you live, it's can be sometimes hard to connect with the like humanity of people. Especially I think, we see this a lot in the United States when it comes to like black and brown children or trans people or people from marginalized backgrounds who experience sort of violence, maybe not even a war. And the thing I kept thinking about in this book was how I just know there are so many people who will relate to war differently because this book is centered around a dog, and that they're able to find compassion for a dog in a way that they can't always find compassion for actual humans. And so I'm wondering if that was something you were thinking about at all in writing this or since writing it.
Um, I think, again, I think that's a really beautiful question. I think for me, the first domino and to enter this, like designed to enter this, what I would call this very scary, terrifying, batshit experience of like writing, designed to write from a non-human was
Yeah.
I just remember like the past few years, I would wake up and the news feed is just filled with like heartbreak after heartbreak, and also this kind of, as John Stewart would say, like how is this happening? How is this happening? And this, and I think like I think the stacking of that, right? I think it led to a kind of human fatigue. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the right. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like I think I felt like sort of exhausted by it, right? And I think what you're also part of like hinting at is I think through that exhaustion, I kind of became sort of numbed by it too, right?
Mm.
Where there was just it was just so much that I wasn't entirely sure what to hold on to and what was kind of like there. And so I thought um, it might be interesting if I created a story or a project where we as humans, we are, and then for the, it's beautiful that we are center stage, right? We are the
Mhm.
center of the stage. But what if I just pushed us aside just
Yeah.
slightly and focused on something else? Like what would that do? Like what would that change anything? Right. And so I decided to push humans aside and have a different kind of narrator or a different kind of lens through to see the world through. And I think in this weird way, by not actually focusing on the humans, I thought deeply about us, and about kind of where we are in this world, the cycles of sort of violence, and hate and all of that. And it was this kind of sort of unexpected thing where I actually sort of was like, I'm going to push all that aside and focus on this one thing. But then the more I pushed it aside, the more I was sort of thinking deeply about it.
Yeah, I mean, that is sort of how I felt in reading the book. Like the more that I was with the
Yeah,
dog, the more that I was thinking sort of about like the humanity of the people in a
yeah,
lot of ways.
yeah. And I think it was important for me where like as he's navigating this really treacherous world with a lot of bad people and bad animals in it, I really want to focus on like the good people.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of people that he encounters who are actually very, very good, who are really, really trying to help the country and do good and rebuild. Um, and it felt important for me to kind of include that and have that be a part of the story too.
You don't have to tell us, but do you have a specific country in which this book was set? Like where the war was?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is sort of the Korean peninsula, just because my parents are from Korea. They were born there. My father's side was, deeply affected by the war there. And so I was thinking a little bit about that, but we're in a time that's slightly kind of, you cannot call it kind of an alternate present or like slightly futuristic.
Yeah.
There's some like technological elements in the book that don't technically exist like in our reality. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think part of it was it was fun to kind of have be completely imaginary too, you know?
Right. And some places are named, like the United States is named in the
The United
book.
States is named, some European countries are
Yeah.
named, Greece is named. But again, like I I wrote it during, on the onset of Ukraine. And so
Right.
like I was for sure thinking about Ukraine too, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like this weird mishmash. But I think that's why it felt important to just kind of open it up into an unnamed fictional place, you know?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that was the right choice because then all of a sudden it becomes
Yeah.
about like accuracy when that's like if you start naming
Yeah.
places and being
Yeah,
like this is where
totally.
we are, it's like oh well you
Yeah.
couldn't have walked that far. Like it's like
Yeah,
okay, thanks
exactly. Exactly.
MapQuest.
Right. It's like there are no train lines there. Like,
Yeah,
how dare he jumps on a train? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
totally,
totally.
totally.
I mean, I think the other thing that sort of was surprising for me reading this book is, again, I told you, my friend Greta was like, it's about a dog, a war dog, and war and dogs. And I was like, oh, okay. But a lot of this book, and I guess I should have put that together when she said going home after the war, is about after the war. It's not a lot of
Yeah,
actual wartime stuff. There's some sort of like, I mean, it all takes place after the war, but there's some like flashbacks to during and like the like Etna's training and stuff. But what was the aftermath of war that was interesting to you?
I think for me, it was sort of, you know, what happens after a conflict. I think I was more interested in that and kind of, when quote unquote peace is declared,
Mm-hmm.
and there's quote unquote no more fighting, what happens? And is all of that still true, right? And that felt like a very interesting space where Edna is trying to rebuild himself, the country's trying to rebuild, humans are trying to rebuild their lives, and not everything is going according to plan at times. And so they survived a war only for these smaller wars and battles to continue, both figuratively and literally. And that felt like a very interesting and potent space to be in, through the story.
I have to ask you about the cover and the title.
Sure. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I guess in the title, also just how you name your characters. Since Etna is the name of a character, so the title feels sort of obvious. I guess it's a good option for a title. I feel like it's not you didn't have to go too far for it. But did you have other working titles before?
No, this was the only title. I think I first, this is one of those ineffable, I don't even know how to explain this. I just love the word. I thought ever since I was in Sicily one summer and just sort of was aware of Mount Etna. And I think I just like the word just kind of haunted me, but also, and then I started thinking about kind of like the long history of volcanoes, and whether they're dormant, active, all that stuff, and sort of in a lot of ways, sort of the way they exist even before time. And I knew I wanted to kind of instill that sense of long history
Mm-hmm.
in this book, and this sense of things sort of existing long before other things and other beings possibly existed. And so that sort of became the seed. And then I started thinking, oh, how interesting. It would be really interesting if all the dogs in this book were named after volcanoes. And so all the dogs that are named by the specific character who recruits the dogs for war, they're all named after volcanoes. So you have Fuji, you have Etna, and you have Samaru later on, which is a volcano in Indonesia. So
What about the cover? Did you have any say in it? Were you involved at all?
my involvement was, I adore and revere and worship the designer. His name is Oliver Monday, and he worked on my previous book, The Hive and the Honey, and I've been a fan of his for a long, long time. I think he's one of our great designers. And so I pleaded with my team to
Mm.
ask him to design the book, this one when we were thinking about what to do. And he sent us this, and it was literally I think we all just gasped.
It's so good.
We
It's
were
so
we
good.
were just we were speechless. And I think very haunted by it,
Hmm.
where you have this like physically this sort of like dog kind of walking into this kind of unknown space, and there's like a lot of emotion attached to that, right? So there's that, the unexpected combination of colors where you have a almost sort of militaristic green almost, right?
Hmm.
And yet there's this surprise pink which felt very bright and hopeful in a lot of ways. And yeah, there was just a lot there that I think spoke to the book. So Oliver, hit it out of the park from draft one.
Yeah. You talked a little bit before about how you write on the couch with your dog. And something that I always ask writers is, how do you write? So, what I want to know, besides where you're writing, which is on the couch with your dog, are there snacks and beverages? What time of day? How often? Are there rituals that go around your writing? Anything like that?
Oh yeah, 100%. If I'm
Yes.
writing, I don't write every day.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I have weird rituals for sure. I have to always go for a morning run,
Okay. How
like a
long?
late
How
morning
long
run,
are you running?
like 10 miles, like
Oh,
a 10 miler. Yeah,
are you
yeah.
very fast?
Um, I'm faster than I was. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't actually keep track of my times.
Well,
So
10 miles, if you are slow, is like a long time. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just
totally,
wondering, like, how long
totally,
are you out
totally.
there on the road?
I'm not keeping track, but
Okay.
it's not like an epically a long time, but
It's not
it's
like
like,
2 hours or 3 hours.
no, no, no,
Okay.
no, nothing like
Okay.
that. Oh,
Okay.
I wish I had that much time. That'd be
That's what I'm
amazing.
saying. I'm like, 10 miles is a
Yeah.
lot.
I but it's the running thing is weird. It's almost like a kind of, it prepares me to write. Like it kind of empties my mind,
Yeah.
and I like sort of start thinking about like what I'm going to work on. And again, this is not every day. This is only when I'm working on a project and I'm
Okay.
deep in it. So I do my run, and then you shower, eat something, and then I need to make an espresso.
Okay.
And that's sort of my thing, is I have to have an espresso, and I have to light like an incense stick.
Okay. Is it a specific
And that
scent?
No, no,
Okay.
I'm not like too kind of like picky about that stuff,
Okay.
but there's those two things are very important to my ritual, which is some kind of incense stick that isn't too like powerful, like overbearing, just something, I don't know, like calming and lovely, like lavender or something,
Okay.
and an espresso, and then it's couch and dog time for like, I don't know, like I can't go more than 4 hours.
Okay.
So I would say like 2 to 4 hours, depending on Oscar's mood.
Okay. I love this. And
Yeah.
how did you know you wanted to be a writer? I know you talked about wanting to write back to the books you love, but at what point were you like, this is like something that I could do for real?
Yeah. I think I fell in love with writing, I would say maybe senior year of high school, early in college. Um, I remember like I'm just looking back on those years, and I was so young. I think it was less a question of like, this is something I can do. It was more, I don't want to do anything else, and I can't
Mm,
imagine doing anything else. Do you know what I mean? Like there
I sure
wasn't a
do.
kind of like, I don't think I was mature enough to be like, I can actually do this. It was more like, this is all I want to do, like,
Yeah.
and I, meaning like, I just want to spend the days doing this. And so there was that for a while. And then I think I'd been doing it long enough eventually where, like, a few years later, I think I was like, oh, I think I want to kind of like try to do this professionally, and so I think it gradually kind of evolved from, that kind of compulsion and not knowing what else to do because I can't imagine not doing anything else, to a kind of like, oh, I think I can kind of do this in a professional way.
Are there words you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Um, I can't think of one right now, but I have
Or
tons. But my brain is totally blanking.
oh, okay. I was gonna say, or are you
No,
a good
no,
speller?
no,
Because some
no,
people
no,
are like,
no,
oh, I
no.
can't think of any. I'm just like a good speller, and I'm like, you, why?
No, I think like, oh, I'm thinking of like, I think I always misspell parallel
Oh my
my first
god,
try.
impossible word. There's
Yeah, I
so
think
many ways you could spell it incorrectly.
I think that definitely that's sort of I'm actually like sort of seeing it like in my mind right now. And I'm like,
I'm
oh,
seeing it
even in my
incorrectly in my
mind,
mind.
yeah, I'm
So,
totally like misspelling it in my mind.
I normally I don't ask people about this, but since you brought it up earlier, I have to know what are some of the like really good books that you've been reading recently that have got you excited to write back or like think about.
Oh, that's a great question. I just finished The Disappearing Act by Maria Stepanova. It's a short novel. It's about a character who's only known as M, who is going somewhere on a train, gets off, realizes she missed the connection, and then decides to never go to her destination,
Ooh.
and kind of basically starts a new life. I just thought it was unbelievable,
Mm.
and really haunting. And so I love that. I love this book called One Boat by Jonathan
Oh yeah.
Buckley.
Wait. Oh, that's a
Um,
different one boat.
oh, is there another One Boat?
This other one boat book was in translation earlier this year.
Are you talking about Small Boat? Is it
Oh,
called
you're
Small
right.
Boat?
I'm talking about small boat. You're right. You're right. You're right. I was like, is there really another one boat?
That was also good. Small
That
Boat was
was
also
good.
good. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, but tell me about one boat.
One Boat is about a narrator who travels to an island in Greece, but twice,
Okay.
both after sort of certain traumas in her life, and it does this incredible thing where there's basically two timelines. Like there's a past visit and a current visit to this island, and those two like timelines just sort of like the way the writer was able to juggle those two, I just thought was unbelievable. And again, like very just sort of haunting and beautiful. So I love that book. Um, I don't actually know how to pronounce his name, but I'm going to guess that Christian Procht wrote a
Okay.
novel called Air that just came out this week, and I just started
Okay.
it, and I'm really loving it. So yeah,
And you read a ton, it sounds like.
I read a ton during the summer. So
Okay.
during the
School
other
year.
seasons during the school year, I teach, and so it's hard to uh, if the right word is read for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What texts do you teach?
I teach a lot of short stories,
Okay.
contemporary short fiction, but I'm also doing like this semester or this year, I'm teaching Hernan Diaz's In the Distance,
Okay.
Rivka Galchin's Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch, Tori Peters is A Stag Dance.
Okay.
Um,
Those are
and
short
uh,
stories, right?
but no, those are long. Those are novels. The Stag Dance is actually a novella, so that's pretty short.
Right.
And
That's
I'm
what I
trying
meant.
to think.
Stag Dance
Yeah,
was stories, not the other two.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, 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 100%. And Kazuo Ishiguro, who I love. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering, this book has been out as we're recording for almost a week. Is there anyone like really cool or exciting to you that has expressed interest in the book or reached out to you about the book?
I heard that the New York Times writer Frank Rooney really liked the book. And so that was kind of amazing to me. I was very touched by that. So that literally just happened a few days ago. So Frank is on my mind, and I'm sending a huge gratitude to him.
I love that. And I know you sort of mentioned some of the texts that are in conversation with this book. You mentioned King. We talked about the Odyssey. Are there any other books you can think of that are in conversation with Etna for people who read this book and sort of love it? Things like you'd recommend?
I mean, again, like I can't not think about Call of the Wild.
Mm,
I can't not think about Ferdinand the Bull. And I mean that in all sincerity. I think it's one of the great sort of anti-war books.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like all the kind of when I think about sort of like the trajectory of like experiencing books as a child to now, and knowing that that whole history, there are books that sort of have inspired me to write this one. I think that's a very cool thing.
It's so interesting. I've got young kids, they're 6,
Yeah.
and we've read a handful of books this year that are animal protagonists. And I was
Yeah.
thinking, actually, reading your book about how many books for kids have animal protagonists and animal points of view, and they're all first person animal, or if not, very close. Like Charlotte's Web. It's not first person, but we're with Wilbur, like we are in his world.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that there aren't more for adults. Like, when does that change happen? That we don't like, it's like, because we can
Yeah.
totally be in on it as kids. And then as adults, it's just like, there's just a handful. I
Do you
don't
think
know.
it has to do with do you think it has to do with what you brought up earlier? This kind of idea of innocence,
Maybe.
where, as we get older, maybe we lose a bit of that innocence.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, how do we get back to that point, right? Or that get back to that moment? Um,
Yeah.
so it could be that. I don't know. I think it's a great question.
Yeah.
I think, did you read Open Throat by Henry Hoke? That came out a few
I
years
did
ago.
not read that, but that's set in LA and it's on my list because I live in LA.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's like, again, I Mountain Lion, not a dog, but that book,
I
I
heard that
mean,
book was great.
I think that book is tremendous.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the recent sort of, what, I don't know what you want to call it, like animal fiction, like it's one of the best that I've read.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know there are some, but I just was thinking
Yeah.
like the books because I'm reading out loud to my kids. They're not old, they're not readers enough to read like chapter books, but I've been reading out loud and there's like the one and only Ivan, and that's about, and then there's like the Chase and Finnegan book and Charlotte's Web. And then
It's
E.B.
awesome.
White also does Stuart Little. He also does that stupid goose book that I hated. I can't remember what it's called, but he's got a book about a goose or something that can't honk, and I hated it. And apparently people love this book, so I was like, let's read it. And I was like, this is bad. Anyways, but I feel like since April, I've read so many books from animal points of view, but
Yeah.
they're all, I mean, and obviously like all the picture books, like for an animal, there's so many picture books. And I just think it's interesting that as we get older, we're like, no, can't do it. And I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
I
one of
can't
those
do it.
people. It was
Yeah.
definitely like, they were like, just try the dog book. I was like, I don't know, you guys. I don't know if I could do the dog book. Like, I got a brand to protect. I'm a non-dog person. Um, but I did it. I'm so proud of
Well,
myself. Old dog, new tricks.
wait, but now I want to know, am I allowed to ask this? Like, has it changed your sort of view on, like, do you still consider yourself like not a dog person, or
Do you know
like, do
what
you know
it
what I mean?
is?
Like,
I'm going to
yeah,
tell you this, Paul. I am not a dog person. Like, I
yeah,
don't like dogs. I'm not a dog person in like, I think that dogs are animals and they should be
right,
treated with the respect that I would treat like a lion, which is,
right.
wow, cool looking animal over there. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, and I do feel like your book actually falls in line with my worldview. Like, Etna can snap, Etna has the ability to be a real dog. But I just am
Yeah,
like, I'm a very respectful person. Like, if I come to your home and you have a dog, I do the hand, I do the sniff, and then I'm like, great. If the dog sits next to me, like, I might even like pat it a little bit, but I'm not like on my hands and knees. I don't want to be licked. I don't like, I'm just like, I feel a little anxious about dogs. And
yeah,
I feel this way about
yeah.
cats too. I'm not a pet person. And it helps that I have a pretty good pet like allergy.
Allergy.
So
Yeah.
it's like I'm also just like I don't like your lab is like it's gonna give me I'm gonna have itchy skin.
Oh
Um,
yeah, 100%.
but I'm not like anti-animal. It's not like I'm like ew dogs. I'm just like dogs are dogs and that's so
Yeah,
great for them. And
yeah,
they don't take up a lot of space like in my in my thinking, except for when I'm reading a book about dogs. So like I enjoyed being with the dog. And also I didn't have to be physically with a dog. Like I could
yeah,
enjoy the majestic wonder of this animal in the world. And I do also really like animals moving free from humans. Like that is interesting to me, whereas pets are less interesting to me.
yeah. And I think what you're hitting upon is something that I was thinking about when I was working on this book, which is like a sense of mystery.
Yeah.
Like, I was creating this character, but I also wanted this character kind of to contain this mystery where we, as like readers, as human readers, like, we don't always have full access to like what's going on in his mind, his motivations, all that stuff, right? And that I think that was an intentional thing on my part where I wanted to create a character that was also mysterious because I
Mhm.
do think no matter how much I feel bonded to my dog, he is every day a mystery to me. Do you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
like that's like it, I think you like I think it's right on what you're saying, you know? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad we can be
Yeah.
friends. You, a dog
Yeah.
person, me, a
Always.
non-dog person, coming
A
together.
hundred
No
percent.
conflict here. My last question for you is if you could have one person, dead or alive, read this book, who would you want it to be?
I mean, because it was inspired by King, I think John Berger, who is no longer living, I mean, I think it would be really lovely wherever he is if, he snuck in ghost form and opened the book and, he doesn't have to tell me what he thinks about it, but I like the idea of ghost John Berger
Mm,
reading the book at night sometime.
I love that so much. Um, Everyone at home, you can get your copy of Etna wherever you get your books. Like I mentioned before, it is a slim little novel. This is one you want to just like take it with you on an afternoon or a plane ride. You could knock it out. It's just like a nice, intense one sitting read if you have the time. Though I actually read it over a few days, but if you had the time, I think that would be the ideal way to do it. But Paul, thank you so much for being here. This was fantastic.
Oh, I was so happy to be here, Tracy. Thanks for your time and thanks for all that you do for the readers out there. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, y'all, that does it for us today. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again to Paul Yoon for joining the show. And I'd also like to say a thank you to John Mark Bowling for helping to make this episode possible. Our book club pick for August is Fish Tales by Nettie Jones. We will be discussing the book with Sequoia Holmes on Wednesday, August 26th. If you love the Stacks and you want more of what we're doing here, perks, bonus episodes, all of that good stuff, head to patreon.com/the Stacks to join the Stacks Pack and check out my newsletter at tracythomas.substack.com. Make sure you are subscribed to the Stacks wherever you are listening to your podcast right now. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please, I'm asking so nice, take a moment and leave us a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, you can follow us on social media. We are at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube. And you can check out our website at thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Sahara Clement. Additional support provided by Sheree Marquez, and our theme music is from Tagirigis. The Stacks was created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.